So let's fast forward now, and we're gonna go. You went to New York, and kind of became quite a big DJ in that scene there. How many years were you DJing?
Well, I was DJing in New Orleans for about 10 years, uh,
Okay,
between New Orleans and the smaller town that I was living in. I was DJing for about 10 years. And actually, when I was about 17, I met my first partner,
okay.
uh, male partner. And we were together for about 8 years. And he was the manager of a club. So he hired me as a DJ, and I was basically working for him as he uh, managed several clubs. And we were engaged in the club community in New Orleans until 1991, or 1990 rather, when we moved to New York. Actually, we were living in Connecticut. We moved to Connecticut, which is not far from New York, and we were commuting back and forth to New York. But shortly after we arrived in New York, he became sick with HIV. Now, this was the early 90s, and HIV and AIDS was killing everyone. So this was something that caught us both by surprise. He got very sick, and within a year, he passed away. And this was another traumatic event for me in my life.
I
And
can imagine.
this, at this point, I had been DJing for about 8 years, 9 years, maybe 10 years. And I sort of, I sort of uh, went into hiding for a year because I was in mourning. And, this was quite a traumatic blow to my life because I was not really surrounded by people who could help me, who could counsel me, who could engage with me in a way that would keep me sane, really.
You didn't
And
find that comfort within the community. I know we've talked before, and you've mentioned that there's sort of camaraderie or like a general feeling of being belonging in the club scene. So, did you not get that support, or did you feel like you couldn't speak with people that you knew from the club scene?
well, it was difficult for everybody because, AIDS was still something that it was very taboo. People were not willing to really speak about it openly. They were still experimenting with drugs, and actually, I believe it was the drugs that actually killed my partner because of
Wow.
the experimental nature of it. It was very toxic, and so at that time, I actually was started questioning my mortality. I was going through an existential crisis, and I didn't have family or friends to really support me. What happened was during the time that my partner was in intensive care, there was a gentleman who was a volunteer for the hospital, and he would come by every day and pray for my partner.
Oh,
And
wow.
he actually gave me a Bible, and ended up becoming friends with him. Um, and he was older; he was in his 50s, and he gave me this Bible. And I actually, during my time of mourning, uh, I read the Bible and I believed it. And that was my conversion experience. Initially, that was my conversion experience. I wasn't going to a church.
That's interesting.
Had
Do
no
you
church
find,
plan.
do you think that maybe some of your Catholic upbringing, even though your family didn't like live out that Catholic faith, do you think that some of your background helped you, or do you believe that, it was just in that moment of grieving and desperation when you opened the word, it was like a new comfort for you? What do you think happened there?
Well, there were a few factors. When I was growing up, I would go to church with my grandmother, and that was the probably the best memory that I had, was just the bonding with her in going to church. There was really no discussion about the tenets of the faith or anything. So it was still a mystery to me. It didn't mean anything to me. But during the course of my parents divorcing, my mother actually became a born again Christian.
Okay.
And she tried to convert my brother and I, but we were teenagers. So
Mhm.
we were not interested. And at that point, I was living with my grandmother and not really seeing that much of my mother. But uh, she did make an impression somewhat. It was a very harsh impression, but
Mm.
being someone who is very someone who's very religious, all of a sudden can be overwhelming for a lot of people around them. So
That's a really good point that you make there. But what's interesting is sometimes it can feel overwhelming at the time, but those seeds are planted. And if they're not snatched, they can really leave a lasting impression, as you said. And later on, when you maybe are more spiritually ready, that can grow some fruit.